We jump in. Let's call the order the June 16th, 2021 CPC meeting. We have an agenda. Everybody's seen the agenda. So agenda item number 1 is a review of our May 12th, 2021 meeting minutes. Has everybody had an opportunity to review the meeting minutes? Any comments or questions? Mike Falsetti?
Mr. Chairman, Meg, for reading the meeting minutes of May 12th, under agenda item 1, review of March 3rd, 2021 meetings, motion to approve, seconded, and minutes from 2/17/21, Falsetti, second by Arnold. I didn't know who was Arnold.
So motion to approve the minutes from, yes, okay, I'm gonna put a comma there instead of a period. Comma was Falsetti, right? And then seconded by Arnold.
Rosemary.
But she wasn't at the last meeting. Oh, that was from February 2nd. Okay, February.
Right.
Gotcha. Okay, no, I didn't know who it was.
We did table the March 3rd meeting minutes though, didn't we? Or did we approve those?
Those were approved. We approved the minutes from 2/17/21.
Okay. So we did not.
We tabled the March 3rd because I think folks wanted more time to read it.
Right.
Okay, I'll add that.
Right. So
I need to go back into the video and see who did second it then because I had the wrong name in there. Thank you, Mike.
So with that change, we're still, it looks like we may be leaving behind still the March 3rd meeting minutes, right?
Yeah, they still need to be reviewed.
Right. So, or reviewed and approved. I know I had read them before the meeting was ready to approve them then. I think it was other members who hadn't had a chance and were concerned about approving them without having had an opportunity to review them more thoroughly. So I say we just leave the March 3rd ones behind and just deal with this May 12th. Does that work for everybody? So does anybody have any other comments on the May 12th meeting minutes?
Nope.
All right. Anybody want to make a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All right. All in favor of approving the May 12th, 2021 meeting minutes? Aye. Okay.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone. And so we'll keep tabled the March 3rd ones until our next meeting, and I'll make sure that ends up on the agenda. All right, so agenda item number 2 this evening is a consideration of the Mifa theater murals. This is something that we have discussed at a number of meetings and had a revised application from Mifa to restore the murals, hang them, exhibit them in the City Hall ballroom until, sorry about this light, until and when or if the theater is restored. At our last meeting, there was some questions about what that agreement, what the language of that might look like if we were to agree to that kind of loan. And again, this is a request for $97,000 to restore the murals, hang them in the City Hall ballroom, temporarily until the theater is restored, and then they would get moved over there. So just a quick aside, we have some financial stuff from Andrew and from Amy that showed we have at least a balance from Andrew of $127,000. So we have the money to fund it. Don has proposed some language. I think it got circulated to everyone, which would be what would a loan agreement look like for this artwork. It's generically terms that the law department's going to have to, craft into an agreement with these kind of general terms that we would then have another opportunity to review and approve before it would be executed. And of course, we're making recommendations only to the city council, would require their approval before there would be any contract drafting. Don, do you have anything to add to that? What I had to say so far?
No, Kip, thank you. And, again, the agreement, which was we put together from some fairly just boilerplate agreements in other that the Museum Directors Society, had proposed, it's completely open to to being tailored to the situation. I think, all I can say is I really think it would be wonderful for this to happen. I can't think of anything more that we would like to see happen. Of course, to have them restored, to have people enjoy them, and to have them return to the theater. And as I said, if for some reason they can't be, they're such important works of art, and I think so emblematic for the city that, again, whatever keeps them in public view and part of the city's patrimony. I thought of other things actually when I looked at the agreement again, or the proposed agreement. Certainly I think it should always say too that the CPC, I mean, those are all things to get, that should receive credit for, the preservation, etc. And the suggestion of the, any residual monies that might happen being shared with I have not had a chance to talk to the Holyoke because the meeting was tonight rather than next week. That was something I was going to do. But all of these are issues that can, I'm sure, be talked through. I think the spirit is there. I also had spoken with VTech. We had that, remember, the conversation about the cost of installation. And the cost of installation, according to VTech, is very minor. I mean, it might be $1,500, which we had always figured were in the, we would front. So if the committee would be more comfortable, reducing the award by $1,500, that would be fine with us. But it's what's great is that it's not some kind of huge installation cost. So I guess what I'm saying is I just think this is a wonderful project. I have to say, personally, I love the fact that when it was first brought forward, and it's just brought a lot of things together. I think for the city, it was great to have VTech, be able to envision finishing this project. And I just think it's, I don't know, we're very happy with this idea, and I hope everyone else can be happy with it too.
Anybody have any questions or comments, Mike?
Don, I'm upon reading the contract, so to speak, that you composed and sent over to us. The $1,500. Currently the murals are where at the moment?
They are they're in storage.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so they're in storage. So you
Correct.
would cover, okay, the Victory Theater Association would cover the cost of transporting them from storage to City Hall.
Yeah, yes, sure. Yes, that cost is included in the budget, Mike. What there was a question about is the actual installation, the fixing of the restored murals once they've been put on a a firm surface to how they're fixed in the City Hall ballroom. And that was because that there was a question about, would that be an additional cost? And VTech had imagined various ways of doing it, because we can't be absolutely certain. He doesn't think that it would be any more than, $1,500. And if if there were an additional cost like that, we were happy to take that on.
So just to be sure, how much are we giving you now, just to refresh my memory?
We had asked for 97.
Okay, so the $97,000 is for the restoration of both murals. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
The $1,500 that you're referring to would cover the cost of installing them at City Hall.
Yes.
For viewing. And that
Yes.
$1,500 you're going to include in your budget. You're not going to come back to us for an additional $1,500. Is that correct?
Exactly. That's correct. That's correct.
Memory as to why we can't pay for the transportation costs. Like, I'm sure we pay for transportation costs in other projects, I'm sure, in terms of materials having to be delivered or received.
Amy, you want to answer that question?
I'm trying to remember, but I know that we discussed this before, and because this is for the restoration of the murals. The funds are for the restoration of the murals.
So
they can't be for exhibiting, because that's like a temporary thing. It's not a fixed capital.
Although we don't,
it has to be a fixed thing in order to be covered by CPA legislation. The way they define it in the terms, I forget, capital.
So I think that the issue becomes, Meg, is the fact that it's a temporary installation, right? So that's where there's some ambiguity about the availability of CPA funds to be used for doing that.
I'm just saying the loan document makes it clear that it could be in perpetuity.
There's no ambiguity, though, that it is definitely not allowed unless it's a fixed.
No, but I'm referring to exactly what Meg said, is because it could be permanent. So is it temporary, is it permanent? But let me just say this for expediency. I think Don has offered to reduce that $97,000 award by $1,500, which would be the cost of that, and makes this issue go away. So, I think that's a happy compromise. We could keep debating it and researching whether it could be or not. It's $1,500. And I think Don's quite happy to get the rest of the money to be able to restore these murals and pay for the temporary installation. Now, if we were taking them directly to the Victory, yes, that installation probably would be covered, but I think so. Anybody else, any other comments or questions on this application? All right, I'm not hearing any.
Amy.
What is it, Amy?
Okay, so the request then is for $95,500. Is that right, Don?
Yes.
And that won't include transportation, just the restoration.
Correct.
Okay, and I was a little confused by the last portion of your email about the monetary thing and how it would have to be divided equally between Mifa and the Holyoke Cultural Council.
Yes, that's a suggestion, and that's just as often happens with artwork. If, for example, somebody came and said, we want to make Christmas cards, from the murals, etc., and sell them, or it's a standard coverage for when a work of art goes on loan. On permanent loan, particularly if it were to go on. Yeah.
I just wanted to say that because this is kind of an unusual type of application. We only got it today. I personally, as a staff person, would like to be able to spend more time, understanding it and learning the terms and so forth. And, you know, talking to the coalition about it. So,
Well, okay, thank you for that. I'm comfortable voting. I think the terms are going to get negotiated with a lot of,
Yeah.
like they always do.
I mean, those are the terms.
Right. And then the committee gets a second bite at the apple to approve a contract if we get to a contract on this. So, you know, we've been, and this is likely our last meeting in the fiscal year. I think we should deal with this. So I'm going to call for a vote. All those in favor of the, Mike, you have another question before?
No, this is my favor.
Ready.
Ready.
Okay.
Right, ready to go.
Sorry. All those in favor of awarding, you know, recommending the funding of $97,000 for the
99,000.
95,500. Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Miss. Okay, thank you, Don, so much. So Don, you understand what we do is write up a recommendation to the city council. Mike Sullivan will bring that there. City council will do what they do. And then if they vote for funding, then we'll, you know, we'll get to work on a contract draft. Yes.
Hi, just prior to that though, I normally the committee decides on the terms so that I can have all that information up front so there's no problems later.
Right, so those terms are what? Like how long it takes to do? There is going to have to be some restrictions, right? Preservation restriction on it, but there's the complications of this, you know, the loan agreement that has to get worked out by the law department. Are there any other?
Yeah, I don't have all the terms in front of me that we've normally looked at because I didn't know that we were going to get to that far with this. But
well, I mean, I mean, we all know it's usually time, right? Like, so let's just say how long as a committee would we recommend for a timeline? Don, what do you think you need to get this done? A year long enough?
wasn't this
Yes.
already included in the original
Yes.
paperwork?
Yes.
So, and a year is right, Don?
Yes.
Okay, so a year term to get it done, Amy, and you know, there's no other financing contingencies. So, I mean, I think it's pretty straightforward. The complicating part of it is going to be the, you know, the loan agreement back to the city for it to be hung there. But that's not, I don't mean financial loan, but loaning of the artwork. So, but Don's provided the outline for that. So we can include that in our terms that we're sending to the city council. So I think that's everything. I can't think of any other term that we would be applicable at this point. So can you write that up for Mike Sullivan, please? And
Well, I really need to look at what we normally do in order to make sure I get all that information, and I'm not on this exact moment as we're running this meeting. I'm not sure where wait, I might be able to pull it up. Hold on one second.
well, let me suggest this. If there's some term that you think we needed to address that we haven't addressed, will you let us know? Otherwise, we're going to assume that the terms that we've outlined are all that's needed at this point.
Okay, well, one thing we usually discuss is whether there's a certain period for an extension that's permissible if the applicant, the recipient requests it and the CPC approves it.
So we'll give it, so 6-month extension has been kind of our rule of thumb.
Sometimes 3 months, sometimes 6 months, it really varies.
6 months sounds good.
I'm sorry, Mike?
6 months sounds good.
6 months sounds good to me too.
Okay, and there will be a preservation restriction required, and
Right.
that is often very complicated doing the PR.
That's-
So
right.
what?
That's another agenda item, how we're going to deal with those.
Right, but I usually inform the city council
Right.
what to expect, like how long is the preservation restriction for, and so forth.
Perpetual. I mean, it's going to be the same as it's going to get, if things go well, it's going to get installed in the Victory Theater. That's going to, and so whatever the Victory Theater's preservation restriction is, which is probably perpetual, right, Don?
Yes, it's covered by the Mass Historic Commission's regulations.
Right.
And what about signage? Do we want some sort of, does the committee want some kind of signage acknowledging committees, the CPA?
Mike,
Mr. Chairman, maybe at the City Hall for temporary basis, this is brought to you by the Community Preservation Committee, but certainly when it's hung in the theater, no signs.
right.
Maybe a sign in the City Hall, but once it's in the theater, no signs.
That sounds reasonable to me. Anybody else have a different opinion about that? Okay. So you have the terms, Amy, that you need to be able to write this up and get it to Mike Sullivan?
Yeah, I have a lot of other things I'm working on too, and but yeah, I think so. So the CPA sign will be like a temporary banner in City Hall, but not in the ballroom. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
No,
In the ballroom.
it'll be in the ballroom. It won't be
Oh,
in the
in the
theater.
ball. Okay.
In
Well,
the ballroom, but not in the theater.
Oh, not in the Mifa theater, of course not. Okay.
Correct.
Oh, you mean once it's actually okay?
Right.
All right. Yeah, I think I probably will have questions because this is, but we'll see what we can do. See what I can do.
Thank you, Amy.
You're welcome.
Okay. All right. So Don, thank you. You're welcome to stay. You're free to go.
I would love to say on this beautiful day in June that I know we're all going to derive so much pleasure from this,
Right.
really. And I can't thank everybody enough. And I know that my board would agree. No, it wouldn't be appropriate to have a CPC banner in the theater, but there will always be an acknowledgement that it's going to be very important. So,
all right.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so we're going to move to agenda item number 3. And so this is the Jackson Street, the affordable housing, an update on the city council process. Amy, do we have any idea where that is? Has Mike brought it to the city council?
Yeah, it was fully approved.
I'm sorry?
It was fully approved.
Okay,
the extension they requested was fully approved.
Okay, great.
And I did send that on to Jenna in the law department.
Okay, great. Good news. So that was a quick update. 4 is going to be even quicker because, there was a second part 2 request for the Rock Valley Cemetery, but that's been withdrawn. And so there's the update there. We don't need to discuss that. Now, that's not the obelisk. That's the second part where they had considered coming back in, and there were some emails about that. Okay, so that's agenda item number 4. Any of you have questions on that, Mike?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, for the update on the Rock Valley, they're not going to, that second request, they've withdrawn. They don't need any money.
There's language in the small grants application that says that the same applicant can only apply once per cycle. So they're basically, they were trying to say, like, we're ready whenever you are. We'd love to do this last bit of the cemetery here.
Right.
They're gonna just hold it in their pocket, but we do need to go back and I think it's later in the agenda to talk about small grants, but we do need to talk about if we want to extend the program because it ends. So that's a question.
Right. That's I had made myself a note to talk about that but we can take that up now. I don't know.
So we had two projects that went through under small grants this year. One
Right.
was $1,000 for the fencing that went around the toddler playground up at Community Field. And then $3,000 for the repair of the Ludington obelisk at Rock Valley Cemetery.
Right.
So, this was an experimental program, right? That we were trying to see, one, would the city council agree to this process whereby we as a committee would be able to make some funding choices without their approving the line items directly. And it was also a bit of an experiment in, are there projects that want to go under the small grants process enough to warrant a certain degree of money being put aside every year for it? So, I think that we have these two projects. I think they were both really good projects. I feel good about that. And they were both, sort of timely projects. They're able to move speedily through, that people felt really good about the application process being simple. So I think there's some good things to be had. I think for me, being the person that spearheaded it through, one of my disappointments is that only two projects went through, right? We didn't see a lot of applicants come forward for the money. And I think we need to think, if we do want to, see the program happen again, which I would like to see us try again for at least another year and see how it goes. Just what does outreach look like? I just think we have to further define what we really think the types of projects are that could really work for small grants. And we as a group probably need to do more work around how do we get CPA out there so that we don't see the same applicants year after year. And I think that's a wider problem for all of CPA, not just small grants. Just how do we get outreach out there so that we really do have more people coming forward and feeling like, as regular citizens, right, they could see a need in their park, right, and feel empowered to then go do something about it, right, or see a historic need that maybe their family is aware of, right, and then move forward. So some more thinking around that.
Right. Well, I agree 100%. I do think that there were a lot of benefits to the project all the way around. It's streamlined, it's kind of out of cycle, open cycle. People can, as projects come up, we did do two. So how much did we, I know Rock Valley was 3. How much was Community Field? 3 also?
Yeah.
Okay,
So that means that
6 out of 18,000. I mean, we weren't. So,
and we were guessing, right? We were like, let's.
I think that, that's not bad for the first year, and I would think, I don't know how the city council will react to this. I can't understand why they wouldn't want to renew it, but they may not want to. That's something we're going to have to deal with early in the next fiscal year. How do we go back to them to get authorization to continue the small grant program?
We did say that we would report back to them. So Amy, maybe you and I can put our heads together to figure out, what does that report look like back to the city council? Is it in person? Is it you just want to document? Are you like, what are you looking for?
Oh, I didn't know that we had to do that.
We can ask Mike to go to the city council and ask, like, what do you want? Right? Like, I can probably just go and give a 5-minute presentation, or to just want a document or an email, right?
Well, I think the way we handled it last time was like a request for funding, right? Like we asked them to take some money and set it into this small grant. So maybe we just need to do that again.
Yeah, I mean, sorry to interrupt.
Part of that will be an update as to, how the program went, and input from them as to how they thought it went. And maybe some ideas about how we can, if it continues, how do we get greater visibility for the availability of this kind of streamlined process. So Mike Falsetti, I saw you had something that you had your hand up for.
Mr. Chairman, I think it was a good idea. And if you don't want to put it on tonight's agenda to vote on it, but I certainly would vote to renew the process for the small grant application for FY22. It's 2 months away. And if you don't want to vote it on it this evening, fine. But I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
It was written up very well. Although we had 2, that's fine. That's nothing to be ashamed of.
Right.
If we have 2 or 3 the next year, that's even better.
Right.
I think it's a great program. And if you want to vote on it tonight, I'd be happy to recommend it. If not, if you prefer to wait, it's up to you, Mr. Chairman. But as far as I'm concerned, I'd like to renew it for FY '22 if the board so agrees.
Is that a motion?
I make a motion to renew the small grants application for FY '22.
Do we have a
I'll
second?
second it.
In what amount?
Any further discussion?
18.
Same
Keep it the
exact
same.
thing.
It's
Just
the same amount, okay. Because if I could just get a word in, I have all the documents that I've used before, so I could, submit that, send that again to Mike Sullivan and say what projects were done. And also one piece of news, Meg, that also might be helpful for getting people interested is that the law department says that no contract is required for grants 10,000 and under. So, it also makes it a little simpler. Although I don't know how we would handle it if it was a historic project with that complicated preservation restriction issue, but we haven't run into that yet.
Well, yeah, I mean, as a
Cross that
committee,
bridge when we come to it.
we have the ability to say for things of that size, we don't want to make someone spend $5,000 on legal fees on, for a $3,000 grant. To do something. So we can waive that. We have the authority to do that. So we had any other discussion? We had a motion and a second to propose to the city council a renewal of the small grant application program. Any other discussion? I'm not hearing any. I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, good work.
Yeah. Thank you, Meg.
So the last, the next agenda item is process for contract drafting, including conservation and preservation restrictions. And I don't think we solved that problem tonight, but I do think that we can have another brief discussion about it. I mean, I just do think that it is certainly worth considering using some of our admin funds to engage outside counsel to, work with us to develop an agreement that would, and we have enough templates. It's not reinventing the wheel, but just to be able to expedite contract drafting, which would obviously go to the law department for their review and approval. And I know that some lawyers will say, it'll take me just as long to review and approve it as it will for me to draft it, but
That's exactly what Jenna does say.
well, and right. And proof will be in the pudding because it's taken a long time to get these done now. So I just do think I would not, if someone were to make a motion to do it, I wouldn't vote up or down at this point. I think there's just more discussion to take place. Mary, you have some comments you'd like to make?
Yeah, it's an inquiry. The last time we did vote to ask Amy to investigate, whether we could do that and how we would do that, and if there was somebody out there. So I was wondering if Amy would give a report.
Right. Yeah, I was hoping someone would ask. So the good news in terms of the basic contracts is that Jenna Wellhoff says she can work on the contracts this week, and she's going to do as many as possible. And as you probably saw from the document I sent you all, there's a lot of contracts to do for the current fiscal year, and then there's some various amendments and things that need to be drafted for previous ones. I did look into, I have been contacting many people and finding out the cost of a PR consultant. And I finally spoke to someone really knowledgeable named Jeffrey Gagno, who is a preservation consultant. He doesn't actually draft PRs, but he's in that field and very knowledgeable about CPA in Boston. And what he told me, because what I did find out, backtracking a little, is from one PR consultant who's comes very, well recommended. The charge is $175 an hour, and that comes to about $8,000 to $10,000 per small house or public building. So as you can see, that's a lot of money. But when I spoke to this consultant, Jeffrey Gagno, he said, well, the idea is that you get a template, you get them to model the template that can be customizable to different things. So then I realized we already have a template that Jenna has used, that she's already drafted. Although the one she's drafted is 20 pages long, whereas Jeffrey Gagnon sent me one that was about 7 pages long. And he was talking about how making it simpler can sometimes reduce the number of loopholes, because then it's easier to kind of keep track of what's going on rather than a 20-page document. Because so anyway, what I was thinking is that could be a possibility, just to put that in your heads, not to, obviously you're not making a decision yet, that I could try to work with the template that's already been used, or the one that was sent to me, and, draft it for the ones that need it. The other idea that I learned from Jeffrey Gagnon is in Boston, the CPA doesn't do a separate PR restriction. I mean, you have to do these deed restrictions when it's an acquisition, but these are not acquisitions we're talking about. So what they do instead is what's called a clawback. So within the actual grant agreement, they have language that says, during this 15 years, for example, if the property is sold within the first, 5 years or something, 75% of the money that you got must be returned, for example, and if it's 10 years, 50%, and so on. And I have an actual example of that language that I got a copy of. So I'm not saying that we want to change all the contract information we gave Jenna at this point, but going forward, that could make things a lot easier and simpler.
Good.
Amy, did you have any luck finding like a Western Mass attorney who's providing these services to like the smaller CPA communities?
No, not really. I mean, it's very specialized. Like even the person I spoke to, who is so well recommended, he, even if we were able to pay him all, he wouldn't. I mean, first of all, there wouldn't be enough money in the admin budget to pay him to actually draft every contract. It would be more creating something that could be customized, and then even then, you still need an attorney to pay another attorney to do additional work on anything he were to draft. So the expenses are very prohibitive. So that's why I was thinking this, since we already have a template, maybe it could be adapted, and I could do that. And then in the future, the clawback language is very simple and straightforward. Instead of doing these very complicated, thorny deed restrictions, and everybody finds them thorny, as I found out. It's always kind of a point of contention and slows things down a lot.
That's why I asked a question about, an attorney who's drafting these agreements or has templates for other communities in Western Mass that either have clawbacks in them or...
Yeah, and I did get a copy, as I mentioned, from Jeffrey Gagnon, of an actual contract with the clawback language, which we could actually use for new contracts.
But he's not an attorney, right? He could give us that part of it, but he couldn't be like the CPC's attorney. And that's what I just want to investigate, whether there is someone. There has to be an attorney who's doing work for these little towns in Western Mass who have CPA programs, and they have specialized in drafting contracts between recipients and CPA communities. So, I mean, I'm trying to think like, what are the smaller ones in Western Mass? Like Hadley. I mean, what is Hadley doing with who does Hadley's legal work for the CPA committee? And, what other small communities are there around? Because I know, Hadley doesn't have an in-house law department, right? They contract everything out. So who's doing the work for their CPA committee? And they've been doing this for like 20 years. They have to, however long, I mean, not 20, 15 years. They have to have my experience in contracts is, every generation gets a little better of their documents. First, second, third, by now they've got 15 years of experience drafting these agreements, and some of them have preservation restrictions and some of them have conservation restrictions, and they probably have clawbacks in some of them, but I would maybe suggest that Hadley might be the place to look for who they're using for outside counsel. And again, I know
I guess my question is, what do you want this outside counsel to do, though? I mean, is your idea that this outside counsel would do everything? Because right now we have Jenna who's available to draft the contracts.
So my thinking is to at least understand what our options are. I know Jenna, is saying now that she has time to do this, but there have been lots of times over the last couple of years where there wasn't time and we were sitting and waiting, and grantees are waiting, and I'm sure that Jenna has plenty of other things to do. So, I'm not saying let's take this out and absolutely go to an outside attorney. I just think we should understand a little more detail about what that option means.
Okay. Yeah, one other thing I learned was that I spoke to somebody at a firm about how it's possible for the CPC to place an ad for $100 on the Mass Municipal Lawyers Association website, which would also go out as an email blast to target small Holyoke region lawyers. However, you don't need an attorney in Holyoke necessarily to do this work. But yeah, I mean, I can definitely contact the Hadley CPA and find out what they're doing.
Right, and then we can and we'll have that information, and we can consider reaching out to this, online marketing opportunity. Mary.
Sorry, is Jenna the current attorney for the city? Who is Jenna?
Assistant solicitor. Sorry, she's not the city solicitor or the acting city solicitor. She's, I believe, the assistant or a staff attorney in the law department.
Okay. I was under the impression that we got a note from the city solicitor saying that we needed to find somebody to do these things. Didn't we get an email?
What would happen is I got an email and she just said, because, Crystal Barnes has resigned and, they're very short staffed. She said she remembered that early on I mentioned to her that we have admin money, which could be used for drafting a preservation restriction. But at that time, she said, no, you don't need to do that. I'll do that. So she's not saying that we have to go outside, but she just reminded me because she did say they're backlogged.
So, even if, there's nothing wrong with doing both. If Jenna's not busy, Jenna can do it. If Jenna's busy, we have someone else outside that we can call and spend a little admin money to get a couple contracts done. If we can find someone that's affordable, but go ahead, Mary.
And so if Jenna is not busy today and we ask her for help, that's great. But how about the city gets some kind of huge thing that they want Jenna to go to work on? Does that mean that we're left hanging? I mean, I think we need something that's more consistent. Am I correct in assuming that it's just, temporary that Jenna's not busy? I mean, to say Jenna's not busy, you can have her help. I'm not sure if that's makes me feel really good. I don't know.
Well, what she said is that she would be able to draft the contracts, but that it would take longer to do all the deed restrictions.
But we have had lots of delays on contracts that didn't have restrictions historically. And then I'm not blaming anybody. They're working, they're as hard as they possibly can work.
Yeah, I actually think a lot of those delays were because of, the party, the recipient wanted to change things. So there's back and forth between the lawyers. That happens a lot.
There's always going to be that. So I just think it's prudent to know what our options are. And I do kind of like the hybrid model of using the city law department to do the work when they have time to do it. But if they're really busy on something else, we should already have someone in the wings ready to go and say, hey, we've agreed to how many dollars per hour and selected a lawyer. And when we send it to them and say, can you get this done for us in a week? And if they can, then we decide whether we want to spend the money to get it done. So.
Yeah, the only thing, there was something I wanted to mention. is that I don't think Jenna will, if we do that and Jenna is busy, I don't think she'll be able to review the contracts before they go out. Because that's what she has said to
We'll
me.
have to. I mean, we'll have to wait if we have to wait. But I mean, I've hired a lot of attorneys in my life, and you know, it's 95% of the time it's way faster if they're just reviewing a document than it is if they're drafting it. So I mean, I don't think, we don't know. I mean, it's just, I think, again, I think it's prudent to know what our options are. And we don't know what those are right now. Like if we decided, hey, let's pick a contract and, you know, we want to hire an outside attorney to expedite the process because, there's some emergency, we have emergency funding projects. There's some emergency, but it can't get done because it's going to be 3 months before the law department can look at it. And we said, hey, let's get outside counsel. I wouldn't know where to, it's not like we pick up the phone and say, hey, here's our attorney that, knows what they're doing in these projects. So I'm suggesting we do this work now to have that lawyer, not on retainer, but sitting off in the wings, ready to grab the project and run with it if we need it.
And you think that lawyer could also draft the restrictions? Is that what you're thinking?
I think a lawyer that has experience working in CPA communities will be able to do that. Yes. Yeah, Mary.
Okay, so do we have specific questions for Amy for the next meeting? I mean, what do we want to ask Amy to resolve or find the answers to between now and the next meeting on this topic? Because we all seem to, have opinions on it, but
I think
it's not solid enough for her to go away and say, okay, I'm going to do this and come back to you.
Good point. I mean, I think that maybe the directive is to identify at least 1 and up to 3 attorneys who are Western Mass attorneys who have experience working with CPA communities that might be available to provide those services to us in a pinch.
Yeah.
Marco?
Yeah, you mentioned Hadley, so there's one phone call right there because they might say, oh, we use such and such attorney for all our CPA stuff. And then I don't know if there are other towns like maybe East Hampton or other local, that we could ask and maybe just go straight to the source because you imagine that there must be a handful, a dozen or so lawyers that just do that.
Right.
Also,
I can definitely do that.
House, but they might be willing to act as basically private counsel for our CPA as well.
I did put on 2 big listservs, I put out, a request for this. So I've definitely been searching, but I will try contacting actual CPAs to see if there's any that use an outside attorney.
Great.
Mr.
Mary,
Chairman,
thank you for that. Thank you. That was helpful to kind of focus on what exactly are we asking. So I think we're all on the same page now. Anybody have anything else on this topic? Mike?
Mr. Chairman, Amy, could you also have as Plan B the looking at the fellow from Boston who gave you several different models of
The clawback?
Yeah, and the other 7-page document, you include that in your studies also. So we'll have an actual person and we'll have a process to evaluate costs and so on and so forth at our next meeting or whenever you have that information available to you.
Yeah, I do have an idea of the cost, which I already mentioned, but I can definitely circulate information on the clawback and look carefully at the preservation restriction.
Yeah, so we'll have 2.
All right. Anybody else have anything on that agenda item number 5? I'm not hearing any, so we'll move on to agenda item number 6, which is City Hall reopening and, what does that mean for the CPC and, where meetings remotely, in person, hybrid, and also what does it mean for staff? What is, we're going to reopen the office in City Hall and have some staff there. So, and, and the timing of that. And again, I don't need to know that we need, or I expect that we'll resolve that in this meeting, but it's more a discussion, start having like, what are we thinking about, first of all, Amy, what are our options? Like, I'm a little confused as to what is up with committees and Holyoke City Hall and what their policies are. And so
right. Yeah, what I learned from Sean Gonsalves, I guess that's how you need to say his name, the director of the Holyoke Board of Health, is that because the governor put this extension for open meeting law to allow, because of the public health emergency, to meet remotely, that we can continue to do that until at least September. And I also learned from Scott McPherson, it seems like the only body that is meeting somewhat in person right now is City Council, that's doing these hybrid meetings. And it's pretty impressive. He sent a long email about how they have set up 2 monitors so people like from the public can Zoom in and see the council members, and the council members can see the members of the public on Zoom. And I don't know if the entire city council met in person or if it was a quorum that met. I don't remember that. The main thing, one thing to keep in mind is, one thing he said, though, that can be tricky, I think, is that whoever's operating the Zoom, which would be me, needs to have a good internet connection. And I'm, at this stage, not comfortable meeting in person indoors for a long time. So I would want to do it remotely. And I'm not really sure if I can connect through the city system with Zoom from home. So I've been emailing with Scott to try to see if that's possible. So that's where I am with that.
So just to clarify a little bit, so we have the legal ability to continue to meet remotely at least until September.
Right.
Everybody. Now, if the whole committee, if we for some reason decided that we wanted to start having meetings in person, then we can do like a hybrid model, like people who prefer to do remote can do remote, and people that want, and I know it's complicated. I'm not getting into the logistics of it, just trying to understand what our options are. So we could do that if we wanted to. We could have like a hybrid model, go, let's just say the city council chambers, because that's the simplest place, and have meeting there. And we don't necessarily, and in that case, do we have to have a quorum in person? No. Meg, you're saying no. So
sure about that. That's a good question.
Between Zoom
Yeah, I got.
You can answer, Marco.
members can also.
Let's see. We had the Holyoke Historical Commission had a meeting on Monday, and it was remote. And we decided, and they're setting up a system. They're in room 406 in City Hall Annex, and they're about our size. I don't know if we want to see if we can use that room, but I'm just going to say we decided to meet remotely one more month. And in the next month, we were going to meet in 406, where I think the planning department was going to work out all the kinks where the commission meets in person and everybody has to be there. And then you're looking at a screen, and the screen can see you. And so the public basically is represented on the screen like a Zoom call. And that's how they can hear the commission talking. But during that conversation, it sounded like everybody had to be there. In terms of the commission, that if the commission can't be on Zoom and the public on Zoom at the same time. But I'm just pointing out that they're taking a month or so to see if the technology that they're working out there works. And maybe it's better to be in City Hall Council or in the council chambers, but that might be more sophisticated than we need, if that makes a difference for us. I just wanted to point out what another commission was doing.
So you think that it was like if the committee decided to meet in person, everybody has to go. Everybody's going to be part of the quorum.
It was not a question, so I don't know for sure. I don't know. Megan's saying no, so maybe she saw something to the contrary.
Yeah, so we have some stuff to work through on this too, right?
Possible for the public to zoom in as well as members of the committee.
Okay.
Both can do. Meg, you think both can do that?
Welcome to concurrent learning.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, and Scott says there's no actual budget or equipment ready yet for the annex in his email, so that's still not put together.
I will tell you, it takes practice to figure out the technology and also the etiquette that's required, because once you're in person, there's some funky stuff that happens around things happening in person and also on Zoom, where you have to be really aware of your sound. You have to be aware of muting and unmuting and etiquette around that so that you don't have feedback. So yeah, if we get there, I would suggest that we do set a little bit of time aside, even if it's just like a little bit before that first meeting, where we get there and, I'm sure that the Holyoke Media folks will be thinking it through. But we'll need to, go a little slow that first meeting and be willing to get there 15 minutes or 30 minutes before and sort of work out the tech stuff.
So for our next meeting, we can stay 100% remote, right? We don't need to, nobody's mandating that we meet in person. And I'm not sensing that anybody here is saying their preference is right next meeting to meet in person. It might be, but I'm not feeling that way. And more just because of, I say let some other committees and commissions work out the kinks out of this system. We'll keep doing what we're doing until we decide otherwise. I mean, summer's slow. Go ahead, Meg, what?
I'm just wondering if Amy has any update on when the public might be also allowed into public spaces, or, how long will the public be expected to zoom in?
Yeah, I don't have that information right now. Sorry. Okay. I can try to email you later.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that's that. Unless anybody has any other comments about it. I mean, it'll work itself out, right? I just think it's important to start the conversation, so we're thinking a little bit about it. And staff, that's the other part. Like and I don't know if the public is getting into City Hall yet. With an appointment, the public can go into City Hall, right? So,
Yes.
Right. And pre-pandemic, we had an office in City Hall where I don't know how many people came and visited you there, Amy, but we did. Someday, I guess we'll get back to that. I don't think there's a real rush to do that either. I don't know how people feel about that.
You're talking about the public meeting?
I'm talking about like your office in City Hall, so that if someone wants to come there and get a copy of an application and have a conversation about something or drop something else off, that they can do that, which they haven't been able to do for 15 months. And I don't know.
Although nobody's requested to do it because, everything's so electronic now that it hasn't really been an issue.
Yeah, I'm right. It hasn't been an issue yet. And that's why I don't even know if people know that they have an option of it yet, but it's coming, right? I mean, my guess is that there's some value in having a physical presence at City Hall for the committee. I don't,
At this stage, I'm not comfortable meeting in person indoors. I know what's happening with the pandemic.
Yeah, I'm not. Mike, what did you have?
Mr. Chairman, I think reading like this for the next month or 2 or 3 is okay.
Yeah.
We'll probably get a direction from the mayor that's going to instruct everybody that's going to use City Hall, the procedures and methodology that he wants used, whether you're working there as a staff member to the mayor or a department head. And I would, if you don't mind, I would just rather wait 2 or 3 months.
Right.
And let the mayor come out, say this is the official policy.
Right.
And then the city council can talk it over and agree to it, and we'll just follow their lead.
Okay. That
If
probably,
that's, I mean, I don't know what you.
I agree. I think that makes sense. You know, like I just trying to understand how to start a conversation because things are going to change again, right? We know that things are changing. So we're maybe a month or 2 or 3 ahead of when those changes are coming, but they're coming. So it's time to start thinking about it. All right. Well, I don't think we need to beat that horse anymore. Unless somebody else has something to comment on it. So you know, we have, I had 2 things under other myself. One was, you know, which got mentioned already, the open member seat. We heard anything there, Amy, about what?
I know that I did see an email went out to everybody in the city about that position. And I assume it's on the website, but I have to check to see if it's on the website. And if it is, I can try to also put it on Hello Holyoke and, you know, try to get the word out.
Okay. So let's do that. And maybe just check and see if they've had any applicants. You know, maybe I don't even know where the applications go.
Yeah, it's the city council.
Does a clerk handle those?
I think it goes through personnel because they were the ones who sent it out, and then it would go to city council. So Mike Sullivan or Councilor McGivern.
Right. So maybe check with personnel, see if they've had any applicants at all, just for the next time we know when someone's applied or not. I don't mean today, but before our next meeting.
Get this term up soon too. Does that mean we're going to have 2 open seats, or do you get to stay on another year?
Who?
Is your term up? Are you hitting your year 3, or do you have 1 more year?
I think I have 1 more year, but what is up for me is 2 years as chairman. So I'm all done as chair. At the beginning, you know, on the agenda for our July meeting will be election of officers. So that's what I've timed out on. I think I have 1 more year left on my 3-year appointment. My second appointment, which was 3 years.
And also a new secretary, or possibly a new secretary.
Well, we don't have. See, if I read the rules right, the only office that can't stay beyond 2 years, and rightly so, is chair. Other people, you can stay in your other offices as long as you want or can stand it. So, yeah, we have chair, vice chair, treasurer, secretary, right? Those are the 4. So at our next meeting, we'll select at a minimum a new chair. And a vice chair, since we don't have one right now, and then secretary and treasurer. Okay. So, and then go ahead, Meg.
Review the dates. I know last year you did that, Amy, where you looked at where everyone's terms end. Can you look up when my term ends and tell me at some point?
Yeah, I'll try. Yeah, unfortunately, the city clerk didn't keep track of it because the various committees didn't give the information. But yeah, I do have something written up.
I know you have something internally.
So my recollection is that the only ones that have term limits are the ones from the city council, right? Like the historic commission, park and rec. I don't think there's term limits associated with those. Conservation, I think it's just the 3.
Well, I'm not sure if I'm answering the question correctly, but conservation has a 3-year term limit to be on conservation.
Right.
But then are you saying beyond that, how many, what your term is on CPAC? I don't know. I think that's different.
I think you have to be reappointed, but you can be reappointed by your committee.
Right. But I don't think they even appoint them for fixed terms when they do it, do they?
I think it is 3 years, but I don't have that.
Well, let's look at that for our next meeting too, Amy. If you can do that research and try and find that. That would be helpful too. Maybe I'm timed out all 3 years too.
I think I only have one more year. And then I think it's in you can look it up, Amy, but I think it says that then you have to have at least 1 year off CPA before you could be reappointed by city council.
After 6 years. After 6 years total. So you could, yeah, you get,
Oh, so you could be appointed for 2 3-year terms in a row,
Yeah.
and you have to have a year off.
without a year off. But if you then take a year off, then you could be on it again.
Okay, so Meg, I have that you started October 2019, and so that you would expire, October 22nd.
22, right.
Is that easy for you to look up for me too? Because I think I was on since the beginning, and I'm not sure. I think I just re-upped recently, but
Yeah, it says here that your term limit would have been done August 20th, 2020. I'm not sure if that's correct, but that's what I have here.
It depends on, I think, none of this seats in the language have to be limited except for the ones that are appointed by city council. So then it just comes to whatever the internal process is on whether it's the historical council or conservation, like everyone has to have their own process.
Right. Right. So that would be outside of the CPA. And right, it's the city council is the, whatever we call the community members or whatever we are that have the term limits. But in the ordinance forming the CPA committee. So, and our rules don't, I think our rules are just on the chairman, 2 years. So we're going.
Yeah, for Mike, it also said September 2020.
Who?
For Mike Falsetti, it also says, what they sent me said that your term expired or would have expired in 2020.
Who sent you? Who did that?
The city clerk, but some of the things she said, I have to look back at my notes because I thought some of the things she said might not be correct, but.
Yeah, I think that only applied maybe if you were a community rep, not if you were appointed because you were from a commission.
Right.
I mean, what I remember is that if you were, citizens at large cannot serve for more than 6 consecutive years, 2 3-year terms. A 3-year waiting period is required after this period if you're a citizen at large. All other CPC members who are board representatives shall serve a term determined by their designating authority not to exceed 3 years, but are eligible for reappointment. They may remain in office until a successor is named. So really, Mike, I guess, for example, in your case, you should go back and ask if you're reappointed, and until then, you would continue to serve.
Mr. Chairman, I've been reappointed.
You have been. Yeah.
Yes.
See,
You're legit, Mike.
that's their, right? I mean, I think that's like housing or conservation commission, historic commission. That's their rules. And we, if you show up at the meeting, you're a member until they tell us you've been replaced.
Thank you, Amy.
But
Thank
Amy,
you.
do you have mine there? So I know my first one. So the way the city council did it initially, they appointed 3 members, but they did it 1 member for 3 years, 1 member for 2 years, and then I got 1 year, but then I got reappointed for.
Right, you got reappointed in 2018.
Right.
So then I guess you would be up in 21. November of 21 is what I have.
No, from 18 to 6 years. 19, 20, 21, 22, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, because I have that you were reappointed in November of 2018.
To a 3-year term. So yeah, so November 21. Either I'm reappointed or replaced, but I can only be reappointed for 2 years because I already did 1 before the 3, so I can only do 6 total.
Because you're a citizen at large, right?
Correct.
Yeah, 6 years total.
Right.
Are you who's the other citizen at large? Meg is, right? Okay.
Megan at MPC. Mary, what's up?
Who made these rules? They're crippling. Was this part of an initial, is this the CPA rules?
I think it's in the CPC committee rules.
It's the ordinance. It's the ordinance that the city council passed. And
Did
then
they-
we have our own rules. But the city council's the law that established the CPA program
Right.
spelled out that the community members appointed by the city council had these term limits. And then one member shall be appointed by conservation, one by housing, one by
It's the
historic.
ordinance, yeah.
Yeah, I have it in a drawer over
They
here.
must have thought that they were going to have a parade of volunteers.
Yeah.
I can't imagine.
Well, they make it pretty easy for everyone else but the citizen at large to stay on, you know.
Yeah, and I think it's smart, I mean, because it's, it's more of a political appointment and it should be, you should term out, I think, look, I think it's healthy that I'm done as the chair and that someone else comes in and does that job. And I think that it's healthy that there's a turnover of the members too. Get more people with different ideas. So I think city council was wise on this one. So, okay, so Amy, you're gonna try to update that for the members, the community. Of course, we're gonna have a new one coming on, so it's just Meg and I, really. The others are appointed. So we leave that to the historical commission to figure out. We don't need to. Marco keeps showing up. We figured they appointed him.
Yeah, but
Two guys show up, I don't know what we'll do.
Well, I'll offer up the information that, that we're discussing these, turnover and reappointing. And actually, the Holyoke Historical Commission is looking for members itself. So, as am I in the local Historic District Commission. So it's hard to find good members.
Right.
And it would be awesome if they would be younger members, to a certain extent. I think it's good if we can get more variety. I'm willing to do whatever either this commission or the historical commission say to do. I'll probably look to simplify in a few years and not do 3 boards.
Amen.
But we love you for doing it.
And I love being here.
Meantime, so the only other thing that I had under other on the agenda was we did get an update from Andrew on the finances. I don't know if everybody had a chance. It wasn't that complicated. I don't really have any questions. I had one that I was a little confused by why Andrew's number was lower than the number that we had been thinking, but it doesn't really matter. Whatever's there is going to roll over. We're not going to, I don't think we're going to, we're not going to make any more awards tonight. And this is the last meeting of the fiscal year. So now we start a new grant cycle. So, we'll get an update as to how much money is available for fiscal year 22 early in the next year and start the program. So go ahead, Amy.
Okay, so then I should inform Mike Moriarty of One Holyoke CDC that the CPC is not going to be funding his application. And I'm just wondering if there's anything, if he asks why, what you'd like me to tell him.
Well, I don't know. It's a good question. I would think one,
Just
I don't know. What have we done? Okay, so what have we done in the past when we didn't award? We allowed people to resubmit, right?
Well, he already resubmitted. I think this was already a resubmission.
Well, but I don't think. Why not allow him to do it again? Mike, what do you think? I'm confused. What do you think?
Mr. Chairman, the people that we didn't fund for whatever reason, we just didn't fund. We didn't get back to them and tell them a why or a wherefore, or the lack of funds or the lack of votes or anything. It was not funded. That's it.
Right. And my question would be, Do we owe them that? I mean, I don't know how people feel about that. Like, do we owe them notice? What have we done in the past? Have we sent people letters that said, you know, thank you for your application. The committee chose not to fund your project. Have we
Yeah,
noticed
the
people
reason
that?
I ask is because when I did inform people, especially Mike, you know, and others, they would ask the reason.
Yeah.
I mean, I could just simply say there were other priorities for this fiscal year and limited funds.
I mean,
Fine, that's fine.
I think the answer is simple. You know, nobody made a motion that was seconded to fund it and voted for funding your project. That's why it didn't. I mean, I can't tell you why I didn't.
I guess it could be helpful because if he was to resubmit a third time, he might want to know, and just in general, an applicant might want to know how to make their application better. That's all.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a different
That's on
question.
them.
So I guess the only thing I would
What are we doing?
say is that in order to fund his project, we would have had to spend down to the last dollar.
Yeah.
Literally, like to zero. And in general, I prefer to leave a little in the coffers so that if something comes up, like an emergency project or something that needs to happen, like a larger project appears next year that has to occur, I like to feel like we have a little flexibility to respond.
Exactly.
So I think that for me, honestly, was we had other housing projects that were more appealing because they brought in partners, right? That were, you know, people were using CPA money to leverage, right, larger projects, right, like the Wayfinders project or the Holyoke Housing and Habitat for Humanity project, right? So I think that he was up against some really, big competition, right, in terms of other housing projects that we funded a lot towards housing this year, right?
Yeah.
So there's also that piece too, is we funded a lot towards housing, and so
that's really helpful, and that's really helpful just to put that into words so that I can.
I mean, it was a very competitive cycle, and we have limited resources. I mean, it's like just right. So,
yeah. Is that it, Mr. Chairman?
I think that's. Anybody else have anything other they want to add to tonight's agenda? I'm finished with my agenda.
Are we going to decide on the next meeting date?
Hold on, because we never really went over the budget. Like, do folks want, like, I could share the slide deck and we could just walk through it for 2 minutes if we wanted.
I think, yeah, that would be helpful.
Okay. If I share screen, do you want to sort of narrate it?
Who, me?
Yeah, like who wants to narrate it while we look at this?
I will if you want. I mean, it's pretty straightforward, right?
But I think it's worth sharing.
Oh, you don't have the most updated version, Meg. This is the he corrected this.
The next email had a.
Oh, I can tell you what the
I'll find
total. I can tell you the totals if you want.
No, it's that I think.
Sent a second email.
Actually, I have it up. I think if you want me to share.
I got it.
Oh. Okay.
Kip, do you want to narrate it?
Sure, sorry. So this is something that we received today from Andrew McMahon as an update on the finances of the CPA. So our fiscal year, the first slide is fiscal year 2021 update. At the beginning of the year, we projected that we would have funds left over from that we were not used the previous year of about $400,000, $401,225. And then the fiscal year collections of $697,699 for a total of $1,098,925. And out of that, we had budgeted $34,000 for administration. We expended $20,300 338 out of our admin budget. So we have a balance of $14,546 that will get rolled over into next year's budget and available for projects. So we awarded 298 or funded 298,677, and that's committed, I think is the right term, because it has not necessarily been expended and it might come back in. But, you know, we did recommend and funding of 298,677 for historic, 388,000 for open space, and 254 housing, which gave us total projects of 963,677. We had remaining funds for projects of 127,363 before today's recommendation for Mifa of $95,500. So that total remaining balance of 141, which is the leftover from the admin, plus the remaining funds for projects has been, both of those numbers have been reduced by 95,500. So that money will roll over to next year's proposed budget. And we will have fiscal year 22 collections of projected of 729,872. And that I don't believe includes, plus the revolving money, so 871, but again, reduced by that $95,000. So instead of 871, we're looking at 780, right? 780.
776.
776. And I don't know whether that includes matches from the state. Amy, I don't think it does, right? The fiscal year 22 estimated collections. I don't think Andrew assumed any match from dollars from the state.
Oh, I would have thought he would, because he usually does. But of course, we don't know the exact match.
Right.
But yeah, he doesn't list it there, but it could, I don't know. I'll have to ask.
Well, yeah. So we need to clarify whether or not that includes a state match. So, you know, bottom line for fiscal year 2022 is a total budget of 776, you know, with admin coming out of that, and then funds available for the other projects, you know, the 10% dedicated to historic, open space, and housing, and then the balance into the discretionary account to be spent in any of those categories. So, yeah.
Kip, if I can just jump in, so
Yeah.
You're saying, and this does sound like it makes sense, that the 95,500 that the committee just voted for the Mifa murals would come out of the FY22 budget.
No, it will reduce it because it's coming out of the FY21 budget. So it'll reduce, it'll do both. Because there's less money as a surplus to roll over into 22.
Right. By the time it's actually, if approved by City Council, it probably will be fiscal year 22.
Well, it won't be out of our fiscal year 22 budget, though, and that's what we're looking at. I don't know how the city handles this, because, you know, there's money from 2 years ago that has not actually been drawn out of an account anywhere yet, you know, as the Mifa money. There's a lot of the housing money is sitting contingent, you know. So from a cash perspective, I wouldn't know how to start tracking that, nor do I think we need to, you know, rack our brains over it. What our finances are pretty simple, right? What's going to get collected in the fiscal year, and how much of that are we going to recommend for funding? And we just want to make sure that we're not recommending more than what we have available.
Okay.
And I think it's also our job to recommend funding as much of what we have if there's good projects, not sitting on it and banking them unless we're intentionally doing it for some other project. So, that's quick of where we are for next year, just to start thinking about that. This 18 grand from small grants doesn't really affect any of these numbers, because it would be whether a small grant out of historic or a small grant out of open space. It's just the same bottom line dollars per category. And, the way that those numbers, that's 72,000, that's 10, that number obviously gets reduced because of the top line getting reduced. But that's, you're required to put 10% into each of those categories. And then you have discretion to spend the remaining 65% how you want. 5 to admin, 10 to each of these. And if you don't have anything in historic, right, then it rolls over into the next year in that historic category. But we have, every year we've spent the minimum in each category, the 10% minimum. We easily spend that in each of the categories. So that's never been something that we've had to be concerned with. So that get everybody kind of, went through it fast, but the slides are there. So any other than scheduling our next meeting? And I think that, the big agenda item on that is election of new officers, or officers, not all of them new. So, and I don't know that we really have much else to put on that. It's maybe review of meeting minutes or something, but it should be a really kind of quick meeting. So I don't know how people feel about getting together.
There may be contracts to review, since the committee decided that you want to review every contract.
Right.
So just keep that in mind.
Right. So if we have some of those to review, we'll add it to the agenda. But so what are we looking at for a schedule? The first week of July is not something I'd be interested in doing. But anything after that, after, what do we have, like?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman, the second Wednesday in July is the 14th, July 14th.
Let's do that if that works for people.
Actually, that doesn't work for me, but I could do July 21st.
How do people feel about the 21st?
If it's a remote meeting, my family's taking our summer vacation week that week. I could, it's in the evening. I could, attend remotely, right?
Of course. Yeah, we're going to be remote for sure. I don't know that you want to do that from your vacation, but.
Well, when we said 14th, I thought, good. I'm not going to, have to do it on vacation, but I don't mind if that's the best week for everybody.
I might be on vacation on the 14th, so that's why I was saying the 21st.
Well, Mr. Chairman, are there any other days besides a Wednesday? How about a Tuesday or a Thursday? Any other days besides that?
I think there's a funky thing with Mimi and the planning board for Wednesday.
There is.
For Wednesday, did you say?
I think Wednesday is like the only day that she doesn't consistently have planning board meetings.
Yeah,
Well,
it's true.
Mr. Chairman, how about if we if that's the case, how does the 13th sound as potential?
I don't think that I'm free then, that at least the beginning of the week. I could, that's why I was asking for the 21st. But
well, Marco's on vacation or you're on vacation.
Yeah, but I think we need Amy at the meeting. So I would say that, her schedule trumps mine. And if maybe Amy, we can communicate if there's a quorum, and maybe I don't want to commit while I'm on vacation, but I don't mind if we're not doing anything. So, if we need a quorum, I'll attend and I'll know ahead of time.
All right. Well, I'll just warn you that we'll be electing officers, and those that are there sometimes end up being the
Yeah,
secretary.
except I think I already made my
Point taken, there
my
you go.
situation.
July 7th is also free.
Evident.
I know you said you didn't want to meet that soon, but if it's a
That's my
short meeting.
birthday. There's no freaking way in the world I'm doing it on my birthday.
Oh, okay.
So.
Okay, so next meeting, July 12th at
No.
6.
No, 21st.
Oh, sorry, 21st. Thank you. When do I reverse that? Okay, 21st at 6 p.m. on Zoom.
Sold.
Okay.
Okay, anything else? All right.
Thank you all. Have a nice evening.
Yeah.
You too.
Yep.
Thanks,
Thanks.
guys.
Bye now.
Motion, wait, we gotta make a motion.
Oh, that's right.
So
Move
moved.
to adjourn.
There you go.
All in favor?
Aye.
Bye.
I take care, everyone.
You
Okay,
too.
bye,
Thanks
everybody.
all.
See you
Bye
soon.
now.
Bye.